I welcome you all in this session. Topic of this session is objectives and sectoral perspective of agriculture policy. In this session basically we will understand about the objective of agriculture policy, and then we will also understand the sectoral perspective of agriculture policy. Sectoral perspective means there are different sectors or subsectors in agriculture sector. So we will understand the how we have to form the agriculture policies related to these different subsectors. So discussion of this session. First, let us understand the magnitude and size of the agriculture sectors. Agriculture is very big sector in the country, and major employment providing sector in the country. Around 70% of our rural population who are depend on the agriculture sector. Actually, we have 70% population in the country which live in the rural area, and the number of farm household which are related to agriculture sectors are 101 million, and we have the cattle population of 512 million according to this livestock census 2012, and we have the net cultivated area of 142 million hectare in the country, and we have the agriculture export of 2,51,563 crores in the year 17-18, and which is of around 13% of the total national export, and agriculture import of rupees 1,52,095 crores in the year 17-18, and which is the share of around 5.07% of national imports. So agriculture is the very big contributor in the national export of our country, and agriculture sector contribute around 16% in the gross value added product our Indian economy in the year 2018-19. So it is a very big sector, around 16% contribution in our gross domestic product from the agriculture sector's growth. And in this slide you can see the production data of the agriculture sectors as per the fourth advanced estimates in the years 2017-18. We have the food grain production which is 284 million tons, and we have the production pulses production of 25 million tons. We have the oilseed production which is 31 million ton, then fruit production is 97 million ton, vegetable production is 179.69 million tons, the milk production is 176 million ton. So from these two slides you can see the contribution of agriculture sectors. We are contributing around 16% to the national GDP, then around 70% of people who live in the agriculture sector, and majority of them they are depend on the agriculture sectors. Now move to the objective of agriculture sector. There are many policies have been implemented in the agriculture sector, and the objective of the agriculture policies so far we have identified they may vary from country to country and the region to region, and sometimes they are also vary according to times. From the across the time period the policy objective may vary, and food security was the major policy objective in India during the green revolution, post green revolution period, because we used to import food from the other countries to provide the food grain to our population. And today our objective is to have ecological and economic sustainability of agriculture sector. This is the major objective because we want to increase the farmers' income, so we want to have economic sustainability. Then we also want to maintain our the farm resources, our land, water, natural resources. So we want to have ecological sustainability in the agriculture sectors. Then input intensification in agriculture has affected the economic viability, because we have used fertilizer, chemical pesticides. So cost of cultivation has increased over the period of time. It has affected basically economic viability of our agriculture sectors, and it is also this input intensification has also adversely affected the environmental and ecological sustainability, because there is decline, there is a degradation in our biodiversity, there is a degradation in the land, there is a degradation in the quality of the water. Our present objective in the agriculture sector to have a ecological and economic sustainability. So, objectives may vary from time to time. And these are some of the major objectivity when we see our policy implemented in the country. The first objective, the foremost objective in the agriculture sector is to have price protection for farmers and managing the price volatility arising due to the greater global integration of the Indian agriculture. Especially we have seen sometimes, onion prices we have seen there is a great fluctuation like 20 rupees per kg to 100 rupees per kg of onion. So, there is and all this basically is due to the global integration of our economy, our agricultural systems. Is domestic prices is determined by more of the in the international market. Then second objective may be the conservation, management and rational use of land, water and other natural resources to ensure sustainability of agriculture. Actually, we have exploited a lot of our natural resources, land, water, other natural resources like biodiversity. So, there is a need to promote the conservation and we need to manage our natural resources, and we have to promote the rational use of land, water and other natural resources. This is one of the objective. And then we have the objective of developing the cost effective and energy efficient farm technology. Actually, we have promoted in order to increase the farm productivity, we need to bring the new and modern farm technology which is cost effective, which is energy efficient. Sometimes now when we see about the water, earlier we used to have the production per hectares. Now the concept is coming up, the production per drop of water. So, like in a cost effective or energy efficient farm technology we need to develop. This may be another objective. Then there is a objective to strengthen the rural infrastructure to support the faster agriculture development. This is very important actually, and we need to provide if the farmers have the production in their farm and if they want to sell that produce their production in the market, we need to provide them market and we need to provide the road to bring their produce to the market, and we need to provide the electricity to them so that they can use they can lift the water for irrigation purpose. And so, all types of support services, infrastructure development service, we need to develop the infrastructure for the research, for extension activity. We need to develop the infrastructure for the use of information and communication technology. So, all this purpose we need to strengthen the rural infrastructure. Then another objective of agriculture sector is to provide the food and nutritional security to meet the country's food grain or nutritional requirement. We have 130 crore people in the country and we need to provide them food grain, and not only food grain, we need to provide a balanced diet to the people, and we need to provide them calorie, we need to provide them protein, we need to provide them the minerals. So, everything should be provided. So, there is a need to provide the food and nutritional security, and not only the availability of the nutrient, actually they have to get it from the market. The government has to make them available the required amount of foods and the fruit things, the fruits, vegetables, so they have the balance side. So, not only production, but also we have to make them available to our population. So, this is another objective of the agriculture sector. Then ensuring economic viability of small and marginal farmer in particular and dry land farming in general. So, another objective is basically we have around 80% of land holding in the small and marginal category. They have the area less than 1 hectares or maybe between 1 to 2 hectares. They are the large proportion. So, large proportion is the small and marginal holding. They do not have the sufficient income from that small land holding, So we need to provide them economic viability so they can survive, they can provide good education to their children. So we need to develop some other source of income, some other source of livelihood them in the rural areas. So for that we may go agro-based industries, or we may go some additional activity like cottage industry or some processing activity. So we need to increase the we need to ensure the economic viability of small and marginal farmers, or particularly in the dry land farming where the farm productivity is very less, they do not have sufficient income. So how to provide the dry land farming, economic efficient farming, that is another objective. Then we need to maintain the we need to provide the adequate and timely supply of the quality farm inputs, because our agriculture has become input intensive. We need to apply the fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, we need to apply the farmyard manures, we need to use these pesticides, we need to use the weedicides, and we need to provide the water, we need to provide them the electricities. So adequate and timely supply of this input is very important, because agriculture is very time bound activity. Sowing season is for 1 week or 2 weeks. So if in that times fertilizer is not available, they will not able to, whole season will go waste. So we have to provide the adequate quantity of the input to them, and also we need to provide this input in the very timely manner. Then diversification of farming towards the high value horticulture and diversity and livestock product is another objective. Actually, if you want to increase the farmers' income, only the cereal crops is not able to provide them the sufficient amount of income. So the farmers, they can adopt the horticulture activities, or they can go for livestock or animal rearing, so that they will have income. And this diversification activity also helpful for them to have the employment throughout the years. In agriculture sectors, when we see the work is only a certain period of time, so remaining farmers are just idle. So if they have the other activity, horticulture activity, livestock activity, they will get the work throughout the year. And then objectives of agriculture sector or agriculture policy to generate the non-farm rural employment in the agriculture sectors, or to ease the workforce pressure on the agriculture sector. Basically what happened, around 70% people who are depend on agriculture sector in the rural area, there are 30% people who are depend on the non-farm activities. So we need to provide sufficient non-farm rural employment also, so there is a pressure on agriculture will decline, and they have the activities throughout the year. And they are removing regional imbalance in the development, like we have the Indo-Gangetic belt, where we have a good infrastructure for the irrigation, but in the arid zone, the dry land, we do not have the irrigation facility. So there is a imbalance in the development. So we need to provide the development in the dry land or the arid zone also. Then ensuring greater public-private partnership in agriculture development is also another important objective. We have seen the public sector is doing a lot of investment in the developing the infrastructure in terms of road or electricity, but we also need to encourage the private sectors to make the investment in agriculture for developing the market yard, for making available the implement in the rural areas by developing by setting up the agro-based industries. Then ensuring the free flow of agriculture product across the states and regions. This is another objective, because production is very region specific, season specific, and then we have to make available this production throughout the years and in other part of the region. So for that there are a lot of improvement in terms of the marketing system or marketing reforms we have done in the country. So these are the important objectives in agriculture sector we can see. Now need for sectoral perspective and integrations. Let us understand the composition of agriculture sector. Basically, agriculture sector is having many subsectors like crop husbandry, animal husbandry, agroforestry, sericulture, poultry, fishery, and there are many other allied activity like beekeeping, the sericulture. So, there are many other things are there. So, in agriculture is basically, very big sector. So, different types of activity, different type of enterprises are there. Within the subsectors, like in the crop sectors, we have different types of crop like food crops, cash crops, plantation crops, horticulture crop, fuel crop. So, there are many types of crops we grow in our agriculture sector. So, there is a need for intra-sectoral integration. Intra-sectoral integration means there is a need for subsector integration in order to maximize the farm income and make optimal utilization of our resources such as the land, water and manpower. Then we need to integrate the policies related to the various subsectors and this policy must be integrated in well manner, like if we are developing a policy to income the income of the farmers. So, we are developing some policy for the cereal crops, then we also see the policies related to livestock sectors. So, there is an integration requirement for subsector policy in agriculture sector. So, there is a considerable linkage, interlinkage, interdependence exists between these subsectors, and we will understand later on how this interlinkage is available. And most farmers practice a combination of enterprise. We see the farmers generally they have the field for raising of crops, then they have the animals for milk and to get the income from the milk from the market. They have sometimes poultry with them, sometimes they have the fishery also with them. So, basically in India we see the most farmers practice a combination of enterprises, and dynamism of subsectors and changing demand pattern provide income enhancing opportunity. Actually, the farmers is having some animals along with the agriculture crop, so they will have more chance, they have opportunity to get more income by selling the milk in the market. So, income enhancement opportunity increase, we have the subsectoral integration in agriculture sectors. So, here is one example of intra-sector integration, subsector integration. Animal husbandry for the sustainability of crop sector. Why this animal husbandry is required for the sustainability of the crop sector? The livestock actually they provide the farm power and manure. So, if the farmers is having livestock along with the crop activities, we will get the farm power for plowing of land, then also we will get the manure from the animals. Then from the crop sector, basically the crop residue like straw, husk, we can use as a fodder for the livestock or animals. So dairy product, basically we get some income from the dairy products by selling the milk, by selling the sometime manure also. So, it provides the opportunity for high income. And poultry farming will be useful for small marginal farmers, like we have around 80% farmers which are in the category of small marginal farmer. For them, poultry farming will be useful to increase their income. So, there is a need to evaluate a policy that properly integrates all related agriculture activities. So, that we need to develop such activities, sub policies which integrated all these subsectors of agriculture sectors. And here it is important to note that the relative importance of subsector may change over time due to change in the composition of the domestic and global market. Suppose now actually presently we are seeing there is a lot of importance from the milk sector or from the fruits and vegetable sectors, but this relative importance may change over the period of time. So, like demand for horticulture and livestock product has been increasing with the rate faster than that of traditional food and non-food crops. So, demand for the cereal crops is completely low than the demand from the horticulture or livestock product. So, this change, this relation or relative importance may change over the period of time. There is a need to focus on the horticulture, livestock sector along with the policy integrated with agro-processing industry. So, we have to also see the policy of agro-processing sectors. And crop sector has performed relatively poor when we compare to the livestock sectors and the horticulture sector. When we see the growth trend of the crop sectors, and then we compare it with the growth trend of the livestock and horticulture sector, so we will find that the crop sector has performed less than the horticulture and livestock sector. Growth in the value of the output is relatively low. Share in the total agriculture is declining from the crop sectors. The cereal production now contribution is less than 1/4 of the total value of agricultural products. So see this our major focus was on the rice and wheat, the cereal production, but their contribution is now has become 1/4 of the total value of the agricultural output. So Indian agriculture is undergoing a significant structural transformation from a cereal led growth to the high value horticulture and dairy product led growth. So growth in the horticulture and livestock sector, when we see, it is basically demand driven, or it is more income elasticity, elastic. The growth from growth in agriculture sector is due to the more demand from the consumers. So consumer is demanding more of the horticultural produce. And when we and then when we talk about the income elasticity, when we invest 1 rupees in the cereal crops or in the horticulture crops, we will get more income from the horticulture crops. So that's why there is a more income elasticity in the horticulture and livestock sector, and expenditure elasticity is also there. When we see the income of the consumer, if it is increased, the income of the consumer if increased by ₹1, their expenditure on the horticulture sector or livestock sector will be increased. So it is more than, so the increase in the demand of the horticulture or livestock product will be more than the ratio of the income in the income. So this is very good sign for the horticulture and livestock sectors. And there is a need to create institutional infrastructure for this labor intensive high value added subsector, because horticulture and the livestock sector, they are basically labor intensive and they are the high value added products sectors. So we need to create the infrastructure for development of these subsectors, and government taking many initiatives for the development of this livestock sectors or the horticulture sectors. They have implemented many missions like national horticulture missions. They have started a number of policy support actually in terms of developing infrastructure support like cold storage system, the marketing system. Government have started a number of policy support to increase the growth of horticulture and livestock sector. Now we will move to the intersectoral integration basically. So overall economic development is a very complex process, or it depending entirely upon the many things like enhancement of production resources. So the resources basically determine the growth of any sector. So we need to increase the our production resources, then we need to improve our technologies. We need to create technologies, we need to produce more efficient technology which can increase the productivity. Then we need to provide the efficient market so that the farmers or any other product can be sold in the market without any problem. Then we need to have the food security and we need to provide the access to the food to our people. Then we need to have nutritional improvement for our population. Then we have the regional distributive justice. Actually we have to focus on the area where the path of development had not reached in that amount compared to the area where the resource is already available. And then we have to also look on the equity and gender consideration while developing any policy for the economic development. So in case of intersectoral integration, basically agriculture is a source of major input for the manufacturing sectors, service sectors, and facilitate operation in the agricultural sectors like by providing some of the services like transportation services, the communications services. All this is from the service sector to the agriculture sector, and agriculture sector also provides the raw material for the manufacturing sector for their production activity. So manufacturing and service sectors are the market, and and the product input supplier for the agriculture sector. So, in manufacturing sector and service sector, basically they are the market for the agriculture produce, and they also supply the input to the agriculture sector. So, thus there is a trade-off between the policy of different sectors and must be considered. So government is always in mind whether we focus on the agriculture sector or whether we focus on the manufacturing sector. So there is always a trade-off is there in the mind of the government where we have to invest more. So, now here in the sectoral integration, when we talk about the agriculture sector, agriculture policy integration is related to with the various policies like environmental policies. So, whenever we talk about the agriculture sector, we have to look on the environmental policy also. What is the policy, whether environmental policy is allowed to clear the land for agriculture purpose or not, we have to see. And we have to see water resource policy, whether our water resource policy is allowing the summer paddy or not. So, whenever if any technology we are developing or if we are promoting the summer paddy, we have to see the water resource policy, whether that policy is allowed or not. Then we have to see the forest policy, then we have to see trade policies, labor policy, credit policy, and also we have to see energy policy. Here you can see one example why sectoral policy integration is required, why there is a intersectoral policy integration is required. In case of energy policy, when we talk about, agriculture is the major energy consumer. We need to have energy for the farmer necessary, we need to have energy for the transportation of produce from farm field to the consumer level, then we need electricity. So, agriculture is a major energy consumer, and in case of agriculture sector there is a possibility to become major energy producer also. Why? And it can generate electricity from agriculture waste. This is another opportunity for agriculture sector. And then a sugar industry has a lot of potential for generation of the energy. It can generate about 5,000 megawatt through co-generation plant fueled by the biogas. Then 2 billion liter of ethanol can be produced from the molasses from the sugar industry. Then there is an opportunity to have a cultivation of biodiesel plants such as Jatropha. So, the energy we can produce from the agriculture sector. This is the very good opportunity available for the agriculture sector. And there is always some trade-off between energy production and food and feed production, like in corn. In America, United States of America, corn is directly used to produce the energy. But in India, we have always in mind whether this corn is used as a feed to the poultry or animal sector. So, whether this, if we are directly allowing the corn, the maize production for the maize for the energy production, what will happen about our poultry feed, the animal feed. So, there is some trade is there, but government always look upon the a good policy opposition. They try to have a balance between the different intersector policy while designing the agriculture policy. Now, we can sum up this session. We have understood the agriculture is a very big sector, very complex sector. There are different sectors in there, and we have achieved quite a good growth in the agriculture sectors. And we have understood the objective of agriculture sector. The objective may be the providing the price support to the farmers, so they can increase their income, providing the subsidized input or timely availability of input. Then there is objective of increasing the economic sustainability or ecological sustainability in agriculture sector, because we have seen some of the areas soil fertility is declining. So, we need to have some sustainability aspect in agriculture sector. And then we have understood the agriculture sector, we need to promote the growth, because we have the objective of providing the food security or nutritional security. So, there are many objectives are there in agriculture sector. So, government have planned different policy instruments for this agriculture sector. And then we have also understood why there is a need for integration of policy or integration of sectors, intra-sector integration, because we have different subsector in agriculture sector, the crop sector, the animal sector, So we need to have proper integration among this subsector, and then we have also understood why there is a need for intersector integration, like policy of agriculture should be interlinked with the environmental policy, with the water use policy, with the trade policy, with the labor policies. So there is a proper integration of different subsector and between sector is required to have proper objective fulfilled from the agriculture sector. Thank you very much.